Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Great to be with you again today. Wow, we've got a jam-packed program to get to, and so let's get right to it, shall we? Let's see, today is Wednesday, September the 18th, and I said I was going to be praying for you really pretty much every day, but on Tuesdays I'm going to be praying for the country. On Fridays I'm going to be praying for your finances and our economy and sort of financial matters. I guess I didn't really designate in between what I was going to be praying about, but I can tell you in our prayer call at our church on Wednesdays, we usually pray for our own spiritual growth and well-being, that we would be better disciples of Jesus Christ. Because the better disciples of Jesus Christ we are, the more impact we're going to have on the world, right? And the people around us. So maybe I'll pray for that today. I'll plan to pray for you on that today, but let's get right into it. Another attempted assassination on President Donald J. Trump on Sunday. And I said to you, in fact, for the last couple of days, what's today, Wednesday? Well, actually, I did two programs yesterday. I want to remind everybody, I'm now doing a podcast for American Family Radio, the Awakening podcast. It airs, in fact, it will be posted today, so be sure you check that out. There'll be some overlap, but it's a little bit different. That program, I always make it a point. Well, it's really kind of the Holy Spirit leads me in a slightly different direction, and sometimes a very different direction. And you'll find that program will be very different than the one I did here for Save America, for E.W. Jackson for America yesterday. So check it out. That's on AFR.net, or if you have the AFR, if you have the American Family Radio app, you can listen to it there as well. It's archived. Basically you can listen to it forever. But it's fresh on Wednesdays because I do it on Tuesday afternoons or evenings, and then they post it on Wednesday morning, usually. But it's a podcast, so that can vary a little bit. But it's usually posted by Wednesday by noontime. But I said yesterday, on both programs, these people are not going to let up. If you think that the assassination of President Donald Trump, the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump, is going to cause them to back off, or going to cause them to reconsider, going to cause them to soften their rhetoric, going to cause them to apologize, I said, you've got another thought coming. It's not going to happen. Because these people don't live by the same moral compunctions that you and I live by. They don't have any love in their hearts because the love of God has not been shed abroad in their hearts by the Holy Spirit. So they really don't. While they're always talking about compassion and accusing the Republicans of hatred, they're the people who are really full of hatred, but they can't see it because they don't have a mirror to hold up to themselves to see themselves for who they really are. Only the Word of God gives you that mirror. And since they don't have that mirror, they look at themselves through the lens of their own vision, and they say, I'm great. It's that E.W. Jackson is the problem. I'm wonderful. Whereas you and I as Christians, we look at ourselves and say, oh, to be more like him. We know that we have not arrived. We know that we are imperfect specimens following a perfect God and a perfect Christ, but that we ourselves are not perfect. So what are we doing? We're striving to do better. We're striving to be more like Christ every single day. But what are they striving to be more like? Karl Marx? You see, they don't have any standard. So they make up their own, and then they pat themselves on the back because they've achieved it. So hating Donald Trump is a mark of great virtue. So they hate him more and more every day, and they pat themselves on the back for how virtuous they are. I mean, I know it's perverse. It's weird. It's bizarre. From a biblical point of view, it's bizarre, but that's the way they think. That's the way they operate. I also said this yesterday, and I'm going to double down on it. And I can't speak, of course, for every individual, but I'm telling you there is a broad swath of the Democrat Party that wants Donald Trump dead. You've never heard them say, and I thought about this, you had a couple of them say afterwards, after the attempted assassination, particularly the one where he was shot in the ear, well, I'm glad he survived, or I'm glad he wasn't seriously hurt, or something like that. But you know what I've never heard any of them say? I've never heard any of them say, I don't want anything bad to happen to President Donald Trump. Have you? I've never heard it. You've heard me say it about Joe Biden. I've said it about Kamala Harris. I've said that about Barack Obama. I have said specifically, I don't want anything bad to happen to them. I don't want them hurt. I don't want them killed. I don't want them attacked. I've said it, and I'm saying it again now. Have you ever heard a Democrat say that? I haven't heard a single one say that. Because in their heart of hearts, they hope the man gets killed. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries came out an hour after the assassination with a little tweet and then said at the end of it, you know, the MAGA extremists, we must stop them. No qualification, no equivocation, no, and now let me make clear what I mean. No, we must stop them. Well, right after you've had an assassination attempt, you put that out. What are you saying? This idiot didn't get it done. Will somebody please get it done? Of course, we had one staffer fired because he came right out right after the first assassination attempt and said explicitly and openly, learn to shoot better. In other words, I mean, you had the chance to kill the man and you messed it up. And the only reason why he got fired was that it was publicly known. I guarantee if he said that behind closed doors where nobody knew it and he was smart enough not to put it out there publicly, he'd still be working there. And everybody would know the sentiment he's expressed and be agreeing with it, and everything would be going on as normal. But once it became public, I forget who the congressional rep was, but once it became public, he had to do something to demonstrate that he really doesn't want what I've said that we know they really do want, which is Donald Trump dead. I want to see if I can find who this guy was working for, remind myself who this guy was working for he said basically the assassin should not have missed, right? I just want to see if that comes up real quick. Yeah, here we go. A staffer that's right, this congressman was from Mississippi. I forgot that. But who was the congressman? Staffer and the staffer was, say, I don't condone violence, but please get you some shooting lessons so you don't miss next time. Oops, that wasn't me talking. Jacqueline Marsall. Now, why don't they give the congressman's Representative Benny Thompson of Mississippi, Democrat. Fired her. But you know that that's what they all think. Okay? This reporter, Doocy, Steve Doocy's son, asked Karine Jean-Pierre, KJP, the question, shouldn't Democrats stop calling Donald Trump a threat? How long are they going to keep using that word? Here's what KJP answered. And I transcribed this, so forgive me if it's not an absolutely exact quote, but it's pretty close. She says, I reject the premise of your question. And that question, the way you are asking it is incredibly dangerous. What? Wait a minute. Asking the question why you continue to call Donald Trump a threat, that's what's dangerous? Not calling Donald Trump a threat, that's not dangerous. Asking the question is dangerous. Now, folks, does this stuff make you just think, these people are, you don't know what to say for them? Look, one thing I must say is this. They are so deeply dishonest that I really believe in many cases they have deceived themselves. And it is a deep deception. You know, like the Word of God says, God gave them up to great deception, to believe those things which are unseemly. And I think on some level, she, A, thought that statement even made sense, and B, thought that she was being reasonable. That question is incredibly dangerous. Instead of saying, well, the President of the United States has said that he wants to tone down the rhetoric or something like that. But no. Asking the question. Because Biden has said that Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. Kamala Harris has said he's a threat to our democracy. And pretty much every Democrat you can think of has said Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. And they keep saying it. Mark Kelly, I don't know whether you saw this, but I think this is before this last assassination attempt, claimed that Donald Trump is willing to send you to jail if you don't agree with him. That's what he said. Trump is willing to send you to jail just for disagreeing with him. Here you go. He said, if you don't agree with him on what's happened here in the 2024 election, then he says he's willing to send you to jail or prosecute you for just disagreeing with the former president. Now, has anybody heard Donald Trump say anything like that? I follow the news fairly closely. I've never heard him say anything like that. Have you? I mean, it's preposterous. But when you say things like that, when you say, here's a man that once he gets elected, because here's what, again, let me just amplify what this maybe it's not so subtle, but I think it's layered, what they're implying. They're implying that when Donald Trump gets elected, he's going to round up his political enemies and put them in prison. Because he's going to be a dictator. That's really what they're trying to say. But they don't want to just come right out and say that, you see, because then people say, well, now wait a minute. Whoa, that's over the top. So they say things like, he's willing to send you to jail or prosecute you for just disagreeing. And they wonder why people are trying to kill the man. And I mean, I went over yesterday, Swalwell, of all people, saying Donald Trump was the equivalent of Osama bin Laden. In NPR, the Washington Post, the New York Times, many of these Democrat politicians have said that, he compared him to Hitler. And I said they wouldn't let up, and they're not letting up. All of these outlets are doubling down and saying that Donald Trump is the cause of this. Talk about victim blaming. Donald Trump is the cause of the atmosphere of violence. Now, they've got what they would call an insurrection to point to on January 6th. And they fomented over 500 riots. And all of those were okay. No problem. Nothing to see here. But the J6 situation, that was an insurrection. That was an attempt to overthrow the election. That was an attempt to overthrow the country. Donald Trump tried to overthrow America. Donald Trump tried to effect a coup. Oh, you mean like they just did with Joe Biden being replaced by Kamala Harris? Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, they would certainly know what a coup looks like, don't they? because they just pulled one off. These people are doing nothing but projecting every wicked, twisted, evil thing they're doing. They point the finger at Donald Trump or at you and me and say we're doing it. Okay. We got to be praying, as I said yesterday, praying for former President Trump because these people want him dead. It's a sad fact of life that they want him dead. Whereas we don't want Kamala Harris dead. I don't. I'm sure you don't either. I don't want Joe Biden dead. Again, as I was saying before, I don't want them hurt. I don't want them killed. I don't want them harmed. I don't want anything bad to happen to them. I want to beat them on the high road of moral excellence. I want to beat them at the ballot box. But these folks are not the same, because they're Marxists. I say that because in spite of the vehement, profound disagreement with these people, I still love them. I love them with the love of Christ. I want to see them in heaven. I want to see them saved. I want them to get a revelation and repent. I want them to have the same experience that I did when I got saved. You all have heard me talk about this. I said, one of the things that just kept rolling through my mind and heart in those early days and weeks and months of my salvation was, oh God, I was so wrong about everything. And you are so right about everything. See, because that's what it takes. You got to come to grips with the fact that he's right about everything. And anything you're in disagreement with him about or with his word about, you're wrong, period. But you see, what they want to say is, no, I'm right. God is wrong. I'm right. The Bible's wrong. I'm right. These ministers who claim to be Bible believers, they're wrong. I don't believe the Bible. I don't believe God. I don't believe what these people say. I have my own standard, and my standard is right. And if anybody's going to bow, God's going to bow to my standard, not the other way around. I mean, look, Tim Walz just said that the First Amendment doesn't cover disinformation and hate speech. Yeah. The First Amendment doesn't cover disinformation and hate speech. So I thought I had that article, but yeah, that's what he's saying. So if the First Amendment doesn't cover hate speech, what's hate speech? Whatever he says is hate speech. The First Amendment doesn't cover disinformation. What's disinformation? Well, whatever he says is wrong. Whatever they say is wrong. Whatever they say is hate speech. That you don't have a right to say that under the First Amendment. And I do sometimes wonder, are they that stupid? Or are they simply that wicked and evil and they have no interest in thinking through it? Because here again, a person with a modicum of common sense would say, of course, the problem is, well, what is hate speech? Because remember, he said one man's Marxism is another man's neighborliness, according to him. So if I think Marxism is hate speech and he thinks Marxism is neighborliness, well, how do we decide? Who gets to decide what speech is suppressed? And I don't know whether they simply are incapable, they're so brainwashed that they're incapable of thinking through the inherent contradiction in what they are saying. Because see, one could argue every time you liken Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler, every time you liken Donald Trump to Osama bin Laden, every time you say Donald Trump's a threat to democracy, why isn't that hate speech? But that's not apparently. But if I say homosexuality is sin, that's hate speech. You can't say that. If I say killing an unborn baby is an act of murder, that's hate speech. You can't say that. So you see, what they're really talking about is tyranny, since they get to declare what speech is appropriate and what speech is not. They get to silence people with whom they disagree. What have you heard me say repeatedly on this program and in other places? I defend the right of people who disagree with me to be heard. I defend their right to be heard. I don't want them silenced over disinformation or hate speech. And I think E.W. Jackson is a blank, de blank, de blank, de blank, blank, blank. Now, I would like that. I would enjoy that. But I tell you what, if you said to me, do you defend that person's right to say that? I'm going to say, you know what? I do. I don't like what they're saying, but I defend their right to say it. Because that's what freedom requires. But you see, they don't want us to have freedom. They want us in slavery. They want us in bondage. And sadly, you got these rank and file idiots going behind them, not realizing I'm the person, and people like us are the people who were really defending their rights. And these people, they don't know it will take them away, because the moment they don't espouse what they want them to espouse, the moment they break from the official line, they're in trouble. So, okay. We need to be praying for our country and praying for Donald Trump. And of course, you've heard me talk about the election coming up. So let's talk about disinformation and hate speech. Let's get to this. This whole thing in Springfield, Ohio, because yesterday I wasn't clear. I knew Springfield, but I wasn't clear where it was. But Springfield, Ohio, it is a town with 57,910 people. 57,910 people in 2024. They've had 20,000 Haitians descend on a town of 57,000. Now, folks, first of all, let's leave aside for the moment the eating of pets and all that. Okay, let's leave that aside. 20,000 people descending on a town of 57,000 people. Do you realize, folks, that's cataclysmic? Now, some say, well, no, you're exaggerating. It's only 10,000. It's only 10,000. 10,000 people descending on a town of 57,000 is cataclysmic. Folks, that's a sudden increase in population of nearly 20% almost overnight. Now, of course, the things said about the petting and whatnot, and I don't know, I don't have any evidence. This I do know, and this is not a comment about the race of Haitians, because of course that's what the left wants to reduce it to. This is just racism. They hate them because they're black. Look, I wouldn't care if it were 10 to 20,000 Irishmen, 10 to 20,000 Spaniards, 10 to 20,000 Bosnians. It wouldn't matter. It would not matter, because that is such a gross encroachment upon the stability of a community that people are, of course, going to be made uncomfortable and probably are going to demonstrate some hostility over it. And by the way, again, these people, are they just ignorant of history, or do they just choose to ignore it? Probably a combination of both. Even if they knew it, they still ignore it. One of the reality of human beings and of human demographics is, if you take a group of people, okay, whether they're heterogeneous or a homogeneous group or not, meaning that whether they're all of the same, say, racial background or ethnicity or language or whatever. But say you take a group of people, put them in a city, put them in a valley, put them, wherever you want them to be, put them in a countryside, but they're all, live together. And they've been living together there, say, for generations. You suddenly take another group of people, different from that group of people, and you drop them in the middle of that community. Folks, it doesn't matter if they're the same complexion, if they're the same ethnicity, if they're the same background. The moment you do that, you create hostility because people feel put upon and they feel like they're being invaded. It is a natural human reaction which has nothing to do with race. And history has proven that over and over and over again. I mean, the Irish didn't respond well to the Italians coming into their communities. And they're all the same racial group, right? Europeans, Caucasians, white, whatever, however you want to describe it. But man, they hated their guts. Because, and I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's virtuous, I'm saying it is a natural human response. When you disrupt the stability of a community, a group of people, by imposing upon them a large, now if you put one or two here and there, it doesn't have that effect. But when you impose a large population upon them that is suddenly entering into their space, you're going to get a hostile reaction. And I don't care who the invaders are, or who the encroachers are, or who the indigenous people, the people who are already there are. It doesn't matter. But of course, you drop, let's just call it 15,000. We'll compromise. You drop 15,000 Haitians in the middle of a community of 57,000 people, and you think people don't like it because they're racist. Of course, that's what the left would do, because America is a systemically racist country, right? And all the white people in America are racist. So, of course, it's racism. It is a common human phenomenon that, once again, just like slavery, has nothing whatsoever to do with race. It just happens to be that particular context in the situation. And so the left can't help themselves. They have ROS, racial obsession syndrome. They need to be treated. I don't know with what. Maybe they need a really strong dose of some kind of antipsychotic medicine. But of course, that's where they take it. Now, let me add one other thing to this about this pet eating stuff. I don't know whether it's true or not, but I'll tell you one thing. I know that in Haiti, given what they've gone through, and given the level of voodoo influence in that culture, the barbarity we've seen take place in Haiti, and this has nothing to do with the race of the Haitians. This has to do with where that island is, what it suffered, and its cultural background. I wouldn't debunk it. I wouldn't dismiss it, I should say. I wouldn't dismiss it. I really wouldn't. Because I think they come from a truly pathological culture that is completely infected with godlessness and demonic influences. Now, that's right, I said it. Because if an American of European ancestry said, oh, they're racist, well, I'm saying it. And I'm an American of African ancestry, just like they are. They're not native Haitians. They're brought to the island as slaves. Their ancestors were, so they're Africans by ancestry. And their culture is messed up. And you take 15,000, 10 to 20,000 of these people, and you drop them in the middle of an American community that is stable and that operates on a certain set of cultural norms, and you drop them in the middle of it, and then you think when people start espousing their displeasure with it, that, oh, they're just a bunch of racists, that's all. the same thing was true with busing in Boston. It was the same phenomenon. And by the way, this phenomenon happened, and Thomas Sowell writes a lot about this. This phenomenon happened with the great migration northward of former African slaves when they started coming northward and taking jobs and invading communities and so forth. Forgive me, I don't mean to put a value on what happened. Again, it was just a human phenomenon, but the people into whose communities they were coming felt invaded. There were black people living in these communities already, but there weren't that many. And they were treated and operated just like everybody else. But when the large numbers came, guess what? Division, hostility, because people felt encroached upon. And again, it has nothing to do with race, folks. It has everything to do with the sinful human reaction to change. But, forgive me for injecting a little reality and factual history into the matter, because, of course, that doesn't meet the leftist narrative that Americans are racist. America's a racist country, and that's why. I tell you, these people, they create self-fulfilling prophecies. They spit in your face, and then when you tell them that that's an insult, they say, no, it's just raining, and you're overly sensitive. Okay, I wanted to get that whole Springfield situation out of the way and put that in what I consider to be its proper perspective. Speaking of that, this guy, David Jolly, he's a former GOP rep, appeared on MSNBC, the Marxist Socialist No Brains channel. Yeah. That's what it should probably be called. Appeared on the Readout, and anybody who appears on Joy Reid show, I mean, if you're a conservative, you're truly conservative, you'd be a fool, because they're going to set you up and make you look like an idiot and a bigot and a hater and this, that, and the other, unless you come on there to affirm all of their bizarre, wicked, twisted, racist, anti-American, anti-Christian ideas. Now, if you're going to do that, you're welcome. And this guy apparently did that. He said, the rhetoric on immigration coming out of the GOP is, quote, used to scare white America, because that is, quote, the ethos of today's Republican Party. You see the phenomenon I just described to you? I don't know whether this guy is educated enough to know about that, to understand that that's what happens. But we've been invaded by, who knows, maybe 10 million people in a matter of nearly 4 years, 3.5 years. And he acts like, oh, no. The problem is not the invasion. The problem is the Americans. And the only people who are concerned about this is white people, because white people are racist. And the Republican Party is only concerned about this because they want to use it to scare white people. Well, I'll tell you what, if he's a Republican, then I'm a communist. I mean, but that's the kind of Republican, of course, they would want somebody who would espouse this nonsense, this pablum. Look, we have a major problem in our country. We have been invaded by people. I'm sure some of these people have nothing but virtuous intentions, but you cannot carry out a virtuous intention by a dishonest means. You cannot cross our border illegally. You cannot invade our country and say, oh, but I came for good reasons. No, it doesn't matter. The Bible even says that the people will not hate a man who steals because he's hungry, but when he is caught, he must restore sevenfold. So in other words, people will understand that the man stole because he was hungry, but he's still wrong. And he's still got to make recompense. He doesn't get excused because he had, a desperate motive for what he did. And so they've still got to pay the price. And what's the price? Deportation, period. No citizenship. In fact, when I was running for president, you all may remember this, but I had several policies to deal with illegal immigration. Forgive me, I'm not calling it immigration anymore. To deal with illegal aliens invading our country. That's the language I intend to use. Illegal aliens invading our country. I said, number one, I would propose a constitutional amendment that would do away with anchor baby birth. So essentially I would say, unless you have a parent, a biological parent who is an American citizen, you are not an American citizen by birth. So this stuff of having a pregnant woman come here and drop a baby and, oh, now the baby's an American citizen, that's got to stop. Folks, that's a formula for the destruction of our country. You've got drug dealers and human traffickers and people who are coming in and using that ruse to anchor themselves to the United States of America. It's got to stop. And for people who say, well, the Constitution requires it, I don't believe it does. But let's resolve that with the 14th, with a new amendment. And by the way, I think the American people would go for that too. In fact, I intend to still pursue it. I haven't had a chance to get to it yet, but I intend to still pursue it. I've got the amendment all written up. I intend to still pursue it because it is needed. Donald Trump thinks he can change it by policy. I don't think he can get by with that. I really don't. And even if he can, it would mean somebody else can come in and change the policy back. Now, we need a permanent solution, and I think the American people would support it. Now, we know Democrats would be dragged kicking and screaming, but if their constituents said to them, oh, no. We don't want Chinese people, we don't want Chinese communists sending people into our country to drop babies so that they can claim those babies are American citizens, taking them back to China, inculcating them as communists, and then sending them into our country with all the privileges of an American citizen so they can undermine it from within. No. So that was number one. Number two, I called for mass deportation. I said a zero tolerance policy. Number three, I said that we should institute the law that says if you come into our country illegally, and that means all this asylum stuff has got to end because Biden is trying to legitimize what's not legitimate. But if you come across our borders illegally, you are forever banned from becoming an American citizen. Forever. You can never be an American citizen if you come into our country illegally. Zero tolerance for it. So once we send you back, you're done. Well, if we catch you and send you back, you're done. We got people who've come to this country 5 and 6 times illegally. And we keep deporting them, they keep coming back. And what they want to do is give those people amnesty and make them American citizens. Well, you know what you're saying? Standing at the border with a great big bullhorn saying, hey, all you people who want to come into America. In fact, you're standing and saying it to the world. Just come on in. Once you get in, these anti-American, self-hating Democrats will make sure that you can become a citizen. In fact, they'll give you a free phone, free hotel, transportation, food, clothing, an allowance, and they'll even give you a driver's license and even let you vote. Even though you're not only not an American citizen, you're not even here legally, they'll even let you vote. So come on in, everybody. Instead, the message needs to be, don't come, and just understand that if you come, we will never stop hunting you down until we get rid of you. And if you commit a crime here, we're going to put you in prison. And when you get out of prison, we're going to deport you immediately. We need to have some summary deportation rules in place where we don't have to go through this long. Come back in 10 years for your court date. Oh, Lord have mercy. Help us, Jesus. So this is all hatred, the whole opposition to illegal immigration. And by the way, let me just also point out, the people who ought to be most vehemently opposed to illegal immigration ought to be black folks and other minorities many of whom are living beneath the poverty line or are in startup positions, trying to get jobs, trying to enter into the workplace, and they're having their wages undermined and their jobs taken away by illegal immigrants. And that's happening because there are 30 million Americans, 30 million people employed in this country who are not Americans. 30 million. Whose jobs do you think they're taking? They're not taking yours. They're not taking mine. They're not taking my sons or my daughters because they're educated people and they've got good jobs, and they're taking the people who are trying to get into the workplace. They're taking the jobs of people who are trying to get started. And many of those people who desperately need that work are the poor and the minorities in our country. They ought to be the most vehement against this stuff. Not based on race, but just based on economic pragmatics. By the way, I saw, I wish I could find this. This was years ago. This was probably, my goodness, 10, maybe 15 years ago. But I saw they had filmed a meeting of the SEIU, this union, and they were talking about illegal immigration and the concern that black people would not vote for Democrats who were supporting this influx into our country because of the way it affected them. And there was a black guy who said, oh, we can deal with that very easily. All we have to do is say the people who are opposed to illegal immigrants coming into the country oppose it because they're racist and they don't like, quote unquote, people of color. He said, and that'll squash that right away. And I thought, there it is. They know how to manipulate black voters. All they got to do is point the finger and say, they're racist. Oh, okay. And that way they can use you any way they want to and have you essentially surrender to being used by manipulating you on the basis of race. It's sad. It's sad. Look, this is what Kamala Harris is going to do. So let me end with this. My super PAC, Stand America PAC, has a project called Save America, Elect Donald Trump. And we are focused now on, we started out focused on 5 states trying to reach Christian voters and black voters. In the last 50 plus days now of the campaign, we're focused strictly on black voters in only 3 states, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, must-win states for Donald Trump. Now, things are looking good for him right now in Pennsylvania and Georgia. It seems to be tuck and tuck in North Carolina. Now, when I say looking good, he's slightly ahead, not much beyond the margin of error, but slightly ahead. We want to keep that going. If Kamala Harris, Comrade Kamala, can get 92 to 95% of the black vote, as Barack Obama did, Donald Trump will lose those critical states with large black populations in them because they will tip the scale. And we've got to stop that. That's what I'm working on doing. I've had some very generous donors give us some substantial funds to do what we're doing, and we're about to go into the next phase of the operation. You're going to start seeing these ads on social media, and we're about to go into the next phase of the operation, focusing and honing in on all of our resources on those 3 states. I'm asking for your help. Look, this is a small part of the strategy for winning this election, but it's a critical part. I've said before, in the last election, leaving aside the cheating that went on in Georgia, for example, 5 million votes were cast. 5 million. And Donald Trump lost by 11,777 votes. Now you think about that. Out of 5 million votes cast, that is an infinitesimal number of votes compared to the number cast. And Georgia has a 30%, a black population of over 30%. You get that population, you move 2 or 3 percentage points in that population, and you have made a major impact. And you don't need $5 million to do that. Of course, I'd be happy to have $5 million to do that, because then I could start earlier and I could do some things that I really dream of doing. But you don't have to have that. You just have to have, depending on how much time you've got, maybe a few $100,000. We may end up just being able to spend these last 50 days about $100,000. But whatever you can give, I ask you to give. Go to StandAmericaPAC.us, StandAmericaPAC.us, and give whatever you can toward the battle. And we're going to put that money to good use. We did it before. And when I went to Georgia to spy out the land, to see what was going on at the radio stations, for example, that we were advertising on, you know what I found out? Bishop E.W. Jackson and Stan were the only conservative voices trying to reach those black voters and give them an alternative. And we were in the midst of the voice of Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey and Stacey Abrams all pounding away. You gotta vote Democrat, you gotta vote Democrat, you gotta vote Democrat. And little old me in the middle of it saying, oh, no, you don't, and here's why. At least people had, at least there was some counter message. If we had not been there, what I found was there was no other counter message going on. And I'm not lying to you folks. I wouldn't do that anyway. But I mean, because you think, well, surely there were others. I mean, the Republicans and this, that. No, they weren't. But the fact that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, the fact that all of those were there means that they knew it mattered that they be there. I knew it mattered that we be there. Sadly, very few Republicans and too few conservatives, more conservatives than Republicans. I mean, when I say conservatives, I mean people who really are conservative, realize it, because those are the people who contribute to us. A lot of Republicans don't get it. Oh yeah, I already gave to RNC. Please. Thank God we don't have to depend upon them for whether we win or not, or we'd be cooked. I trust Donald Trump's campaign is a whole lot better than the RNC. And anybody giving to the RNC, in my view, is just wasting your money. I'm serious, just wasting your money. But you won't be wasting it giving to us, because we are putting every available dollar we can into reaching a population that very few conservatives reach, or even try to reach, because there's no vehicle for them to reach them. We are providing that vehicle. Help us. StandAmericaPAC.us. Look, you know what to do. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up. Because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.